Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to my channel. And a couple weeks ago, I posted a video of a custom reading journal I made, and y'all seem to go crazy over that. So I thought, why not do a flip through of my 2022 reading journal? So, fun fact, I didn't actually start my reading journal until April. I did my book spreads and my TBRs or to be read in my regular bullet journal or my collections journal, and each month I had a TBR. I would record what I read. Sometimes I would have a bingo, and it was about March or April that I realized I wanted all my book stuff in one place. So the first couple you'll see in this craft paper journal, it was from Archer and Olive, which I love the brown pages. This was one of my favorite books of the year. It's called The Deep. It was by Rivers Solomon, and it's based off a song about, the slave ships and people who get thrown overboard, and then they turned into mermaids. It's really good. It was a novella, but really good. So this is actually the reading journal I got. It's from Stella Bookish Art. I got it on Etsy because I had it in my mind that I wouldn't have time to set up my spreads, because I set up spreads in my collections journal. I have my regular planner / bullet journal, and I thought I didn't have the time to do it all from scratch. So some of the things in here are pre-planned out or pre-done. And of course her art was really, really beautiful. I like the black and gold. So you saw my read before 2023. This was I had some throwback Harry Potter stickers. So it's one of my favorite series of all time. So I made a little spread for that. And so each month was set up like this. So it's undated too. It had a quote on the left side, and then it had a space for favorite quotes. And for the first month, and this is April, my April spread, I did the quotes, but I don't usually write down quotes from books. So it was split up with to be read, reading challenge, book haul, which I always covered up, and monthly favorites. I always covered up book haul because I don't buy books. I only buy books if I know that I'm going to read them again, because I read so much. I read over 100 books, and if I bought all those, y'all, I ain't got that kind of money. So it had the months already done out, so I wouldn't have to count and draw them, and I would either mark down or put a sticker of every day I read. I like to keep track. And then some of my favorite books I would make little spreads for. They're either collages or stuff I draw or something like that. I always write a wrap up. So there's the title, the star rating, how many I read in the month. And these are just some of my favorites from the month of April. I started the Every Heart a Doorway, which is the Wayward Children series by Shannon McGuire. It's just so good. They're little novellas, and it's about, what happens to the people that go through portals, you always with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but what happens if they come back to the real world and they're all jacked up in the brain. And I just fell in love. Each of them follow a different character. I think there's 8 of them now, and I haven't read them all. I kind of bounce around because they're not all connected. Some of them are kind of standalone, but the characters are great. Everything's great. I loved it so much. So this was May, and I did do a Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month challenge, which I tried to read more books by Asian or Pacific Island authors. I am the DNF queen. If I'm not enjoying something a couple of chapters in, I just stop reading it, because there are so many books out there in the world, and I'm not going to keep reading something or suffering through something if I'm not enjoying it. So this was another one of my favorites, In an Absent Dream. This is from the Wayward Children series. I think it's actually number 4 because I liked number 1. Number 2, I was kind of halfway on. I didn't even read number 3, but then I read number 4 and it was just amazing. So I made a little spread, and I usually like write down my thoughts or how I felt when I was reading it, not necessarily reviews. The Love Hypothesis is complete trash, but I loved it so much. Like it just made me happy. It doesn't have to be profound or a great piece of literature. And then I also read the Atlas 6, which was really, really good. Nothing really happens, but I'm a sucker for dark academia. So this was June. And of course I did LGBT challenge. And this is actually where I read another book by River Solomon, who wrote The Deep. I just loved The Deep so much, so I ended up reading all of their backlist. They've only written like 3 or 4, I think, but I read them all. And I did pretty good this month. And then this is when I started writing down if I read it electronically or physically, because I read a lot on Libby and stuff because it's easier to read electronically than physically sometimes because I have 2 toddlers. You made a fool of death with your beauty. I loved this. Was also another author, Akweki, I think, Emezi. Their writing style is just amazing. And then I also liked Sorrowland. It was a solid 5 stars. So I actually didn't end up doing like quotes like I was supposed to. I would just put like a saying or make it like a cover page. This month was terrible for reading. This is July. I did not read a lot. I kind of fell back. If I'm in like a reading slump, I usually end up just reading kind of self-published Amazon romances, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they're fluffy and easy. I read lots of manga and stuff because my brain was not in it that month at all. Like I didn't even make a favorite of the month spread. I just wasn't into it. I think the next month got a little bit better. I actually decorated a little bit more. I got these wonderful like fairy tale fantasy stickers from the Sticky Club subscription. And I just love this color palette. It was lots of like dusty pinks and browns and peaches and aqua. So I put that book, The Restless Truth, on my TBR, but it wasn't even out until November, so I couldn't read it. I do love Katie Roberts' Dark Olympus, I think it's called, series. All of those are so amazing. So good, so good, so good. But I just love all these stickers so much. I think I like the stickers more than I just love these spreads so much. They're simple, and I could just decorate without having to worry to set up the spreads. But I will say that when I bought this, a week later, the binding broke. Like I hadn't even started using it or scrapbooking in it to make the binding break. But like the cover paper, like the starting pages, like ripped off the cover. And so I had to like tape it together, and I spent quite a bit of money on it, and I was kind of disappointed. I have yet to find the perfect like pre-made reading journal. So this year, 2023, I just made my own, and I just make the time to make my spreads. I always try to take shortcuts with pre-made planners, and then I end up completely changing the layouts and just messing with them anyway, so might as well just start from scratch so I get exactly what I want. I just thought that with 2 kids under 4, or actually my oldest just turned 5, that it would be too difficult. But I make the time. I can't do it all in one sitting, but I do end up making my spreads with plenty of time to use them for my 4 different journals. This month was also another kind of slow one, but it came up with like 2 of my favorite books of the year. Iron Widow was so good. It had polyamory representation. It's Chinese mythology. It's sci-fi. It's basically putting a middle finger up to the patriarchy, and it's amazing. So good. And I also like this book, The Cartographers, and I actually love this spread too. It's very scrapbooky. It was another kind of academia themed book with like map magic, and the magic system made absolutely no sense, but I enjoyed that book so much. And then, so this is October, and I made more of a kind of spooky spread with more stickers from the Sticky Club. And I tried to challenge myself to read more horror, but I didn't end up doing that. I did participate in the Locked Booktition, Blackaweenathon, and I did pretty good. I think I got 3 or 4 out of the 5 or 6 prompts. If you haven't checked out the Locked Booktition, Brie, she's pretty awesome. I love her content. But the further in the year I go, the less steam I have. I still end up reading every day, but Legends and Latte is probably one of my favorites of the year. It's this kind of new genre I'm exploring, and it's cozy fantasy, low stakes, and it's just about an orc who doesn't want to fight anymore and opens a cafe, and she falls in love with a girl succubus, so it has queer rep, and it was just very low stakes, and it was like a warm hug. I love November spreads too, and the color palette. This was when I started getting a lot into neutrals, so you have this like kind of minty green and brown and orange. And then I did a readathon. It was the Skoden readathon. I think it's by the lady warrior, I think her name is. And it was just, it's Native American Heritage Month. So I read lots of books. You should read diversely the whole year, but I read lots of Indigenous middle grade and children's books and adult books. I read my first Stephen Graham Jones book, which was horror, so that's something. Oh, Ready When You Are. This was actually like Australian, Aboriginal, gay, young adult love story. So sweet, like first love, finding yourself. And then I read this other book, Lavender House, which isn't in one of my normal genres, but was set in like the 50s, and everybody's gay and navigating a murder mystery. Really cool. This is December, and I didn't really read a lot in December, but I did get 2 more of my favorite books of the year. Summer Suns, which is very like horror gothic. It was just amazing. And then also A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Another kind of nothing really happens. It just follows a tea monk and a robot, like artificial intelligence robot. And it was just everything I needed. Another kind of warm hug. And with these spreads, I just kind of find stuff that reminds me of the book, and it's usually mostly collage-y, or I draw out what I think the characters look like. And then these are some of the end pages. It did have a lot of these things in the back, and I started out doing some of them, but I just don't like coloring in like a bookshelf. I know a lot of people with reading journals do, but I don't really do that. So I stopped like in August. It just doesn't do anything for me. And as far as stats go, I don't really care about how many pages I read or anything like that. This was kind of fun. It's awards and favorites. I kind of sort of did it. And then this was my 2022 book bracket. So I would pick a favorite from each month, and they would kind of go head to head until I got to my favorite book of the year. I first found that from Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride, but I just found like a printable and stuck it in the back. So you can probably pause the video and see all the ones I liked. And eventually I got down to my favorites. The two finalists were Sorrowland by River Solomon, which is a book about a woman who is struggling with like her identity and realizes that maybe they're gay or they're trans or or something like that. And then they live on like a cult commune, and it's like Black people going back away from the corruption of whiteness, and they just live in the woods, and she ends up running away because she keeps having these visions. And then later on you realize like what's really going on. There's some horror elements, there's, you know, lots of queer representation. It's very strange. It's very weird. I think she ends up kind of turning into a mushroom. But I still think about that book. I read that back in like June, and I still think about it. I recommend it to everyone. And then the other one was The Summer Sons, and that's also lots of gay rep, lots of trans rep, queer people out the butt, and dealing with grief and magic and almost like kind of voodoo elements is so good, y'all. So I had a really, 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 really hard time picking, but I feel like book of the year has to be Sorrowland by River Solomon. I've recommended it to a million people, and it's my favorite. And then the last couple pages I just used to plan out my 2023 reading journal. And that's all she wrote. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time, guys. Bye.